Novak Djokovic is suing the ATP and WTA Tours. What does this mean? Let's find out on String Theory. Fresh off the presses today, we have an article from The Athletic by Matthew Futterman about the PTPA, co-founded by Novak Djokovic, suing the ATP and WTA Tours. It seems like big news. It's hard to tell what the ramifications of this are going to be. I'm obviously not a lawyer. I obviously don't have any inside information as to how this exactly will play out. But it's interesting because years ago, the Professional Tennis Players Association, the PTPA, was formed, and we didn't really know what the purpose of the organization was going to be, other than it wanted to challenge the status quo. And this is obviously challenging the status quo. So let's dig in here a little bit. The lawsuit is basically labeling the biggest governing tennis bodies as cartels. And that's extremely abrasive language. Court documents filed in New York City, London, and Brussels named the men's ATP and women's WTA tours, the ITF, and the ITIA as defendants. The lawsuits reveal how tennis's corrupt governing bodies systemically abuse, silence, and exploit players to drive personal profits through monopolistic control. Named plaintiffs include several well-known players from across the world, including Nick Kyrgios, Sorana Cirstea, and Riley Opelka. A spokesperson for the PTPA said over 250 professional players across all tiers of sports, as well as the organization's executive committee, which includes Djokovic, who has been pushing for litigation for 2 years, as well as former top 10 players Ons Jabeur and Hubert Hurkacz, support the action. The lawsuit also names the 4 Grand Slams as co-conspirators alongside the ATP. The rankings points system is at the heart of the lawsuit. It states that the system dictates which tournaments players can compete in, how much compensation they earn, and whether they receive certain sponsorship opportunities. Defendants award ranking points to players only if they play in tournaments produced by defendants' co-conspirators. And then finally, we also get to the ITIA. The lawsuit argues that some of its investigative techniques are abusive and violate basic terms of due process. Named practices include searches and seizures of their phones, interrogations without defense attorneys present, and what the lawsuit calls harassment by unaccountable and ill-trained investigators. So it seems like the PTPA is kind of going after everything here, right? We've heard a lot of grievances about the ITIA and the way that it's handled the whole Sinner case. And now we have something in a lawsuit that is kind of going over processes that the ITIA is engaging in and basically challenging how fair this is. Now, what's going to happen from all this? I don't know. I'm kind of a cynic. I don't know if anything's going to happen from this, but it is interesting to see that the PTPA has finally done something of note. You know, I remember back when this kind of organization was first announced, right? And then you have this whole kind of seemingly disagreement between the big three, Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, about how exactly the future of the sport should be handled. And with this, I mean, we're kind of seeing what Novak Djokovic is trying to get at. They also mentioned that sports such as the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, WNBA, they have all fought for the same rights, protections, and fair treatment that athletes in other major sports get. So, I mean, it's obvious. Ever since this kind of organization, the PTPA, was started by Novak Djokovic, he has wanted to challenge the status quo, right? We just didn't know exactly what that meant, because he started an organization and then nothing really happened until it seems like now. Now there's actually definitive action behind it. It's hard to say what's going to come of all this. I'm not a lawyer, like I said. I don't know how these claims are going to be received by a court. I don't know if there will be like a settlement. I don't know how these things work. It's kind of like a quasi-union is kind of what they want to be creating, right? The MLB, NHL, NBA, NFL, those all have unions for the players to collectively bargain, whereas in the ATP Tour and WTA Tour, these players are independent contractors who are not in a union, and there's no way for them to kind of collectively kind of bargain, right? This lawsuit seems to be challenging the tournaments and the tours authorities for how they basically organize the tours. if this were to kind of succeed, I think you would see a kind of a major shift in how these tours operate. But the question is, will this succeed? We just don't know. I think it's also interesting how they go after the ITIA. Basically, we've seen so much discontent among the players after the Sinner decision and how that whole case was handled. Mainly not even just the decision, just how quickly he was able to get his decision through and how limited of a punishment he received. A lot of people are claiming that it's unfair, and now we see other complaints that they have against the ITAA, basically saying that their procedures are not fair at all in the first place. And again, this is just kind of jumping off of the general kind of unhappiness the players have had recently with how these things are handled. We also have here a quote from James Quinn, who worked with player organizations in the NFL and NBA. He says, "Professional tennis players face some of the most troubling conditions I've ever seen. I've spent decades working with athletes across global sports, and the complete disregard for tennis players' welfare by the powers at large is unlike anything I've ever encountered." It's big words. It's big words. Obviously a big statement. And, it's true. It's true. I mean, it's hard to fathom, right? Because this guy has worked with the NFL, right? Not exactly a beacon of well-treated players, right? And he's saying tennis players are far worse off. So that's obviously not a good bar to set. And then finally, we end with the PTPA saying, "These legal actions are about accountability and real reform now. Fixing these systemic failures will not just benefit players, it will elevate the entire sport. This is not about disrupting tennis, it is about saving it." So that's basically the gist. That's basically what we're dealing with here. Again, this just dropped this morning from The Athletic, and we just have to wait and see what happens from this. Will the tours be proactive? Will they change how they do things preemptively? I don't know. That seems a little bit optimistic to think. Where does this case go? Is there some kind of settlement? This could take years to settle and figure out exactly what the outcome of all this is, right? I mean, clearly you have a lot of players who are not happy with the way things are being run, whether on the tour, whether it be with the anti-doping, with the way that the Sinner case was handled. So there's a lot of unhappiness, it seems like, right now on the tour. You don't have to be a member of the PTPA to kind of feel that way. I don't know. I'm skeptical that anything will come of this, unfortunately. Maybe some minor concessions will be made by the tours so that they can say, hey, we're doing something. But I don't know. It's hard to tell. And now we kind of have another large story about the way that the tour is being conducted, first with the Sinner case and now with this. And that seems to be the theme so far this year. So we'll just have to see how this case plays out, how the rest of the year plays out with these kind of stories. And it'll be interesting, and we'll obviously be covering it every step of the way. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.